A while back, we discussed the original Dragon Quest and how important it was to the overall RPG landscape, not only at the time, but due to its legacy the many years since then. But did you know that before making Dragon Quest, Yuji Horii made some other games? His first game was called Love Match Tennis, and it was part of a contest, with him being one of the 13 winners. And after this, he stayed in game development, being inspired by the text adventure game format and noting the lack of such games in Japan, he decided to make his own. At first, the concept was to create a game where you could actually converse with the game itself, almost at that of an AI level. But he had to tone himself down, and eventually ended up making a game with a non-linear narrative where you, the player, issue commands to NPCs to play. The game was a huge success over in Japan, being highly influential to other game creators such as Hideo Kojima and Eiji Aonuma. This game was called Portopia Serial Murder Case, and after the massive success of the PC version, it eventually received a famicom port, and sadly, neither of these were localized in the West. The famicom port is especially important to my earlier discussion, as unlike the PC version's text parser, the port had to rely on a command menu. The command menu, though later on be used as the basis for Dragon Quest's command menu. It's amazing to think just how much the gaming industry was growing from each other back then. Just small little details like one game coming out and then a year later another game growing off of that. Reading about the game's development convinced me to play it, especially as its relative obscurity here in America meant that I knew almost nothing about it so I could get a fresh experience. I will be playing 3 versions for the video, but my main focus will be on the fan-translated Famicom version, so let's get into it. Starting off with the PC-88 version as a test, just to see how it goes, the game opens with a wall of text that I can vaguely comprehend but not enough to tell you what this says word for word. As mentioned previously, the PC versions used a text parser, where you need to actually type in commands for the game to then act out. The big thing to keep in mind here is that you aren't physically doing most of this stuff yourself. You are telling your assistant, Yasu, to do it for you. It's not a big deal, but if you don't know proper grammar, this could cause you some problems. We do, luckily, have some basic commands mapped to the function keys to speed up this process, but it's still not that easy for me. My limited understanding of Japanese and my lack of a Japanese keyboard meant I could only do basic stuff like move to different locations or talk to NPCs, and it still took me a very long time to do any of that. It was still nice to play around with and see some of the different backgrounds to look at, but it's time that I move on to the Famicom version, so we can not only get to the meat of this video, but I'll also have a more solid grasp of what's happening. Right off the bat, the first major difference you'll see is that the Famicom version doesn't have a wall of text at the beginning of the game, and just opens with you on the street talking to Yasu. I am presumed that this was done to save space, as the story behind the game is in the manual instead. The basic gist of the story is that you are a boss. No name, just boss. Not the boss, not a boss, just boss. Yasu, your assistant, bursts into the room and tells you that Kozo, a loan shark, had killed himself. His secretary, Fumie, noticed that he hadn't come to work and went to his house to find his body behind a locked door. It seems like a pretty clear-cut case. I mean, nobody else could have killed him if the door was locked, but you decided to investigate anyways. I'm not sure exactly why you did this, because you're not really given any motivation to do so, but it's a good thing you did, because we wouldn't have much of a game otherwise. From here on out, the game plays pretty much like any other adventure game, with you checking every nook and cranny for items, asking NPCs about literally anything, and punching people in the face. You do actually need to punch 2 people in the face to progress the game, and it's very funny to me to see police brutality just casually played off as a game mechanic. It only works with some things, though. If you try to punch Fumie, she just calls you violent and leaves, which is understandable in all honesty. Tangentially related to the above point, I do think it's funny just how much Yasu will do whatever you tell him to do, regardless of context. You can tell him to punch the wall and he'll do it. Sometimes when you tell him to look for something, he'll jokingly say he found something before going, haha, I lied. And if you tell him to look inside the strip club, he'll go in and start to look at the strippers and just start hooting and hollering. It's honestly kind of cool to see them trying to turn the user interface into an actual character, especially because Yasu is just kind of like a goofball as a result. This even comes back into play with the story and how Yasu reacts to certain things, so I'm kind of glad that they took such a creative path towards giving the player this freedom. I ended up actually enjoying my time with Yasu as a partner because his personality shines through because of it to make up for the fact that the main character is such a blank slate. Yeah, it actually reminds me a bit of how, like, in a lot of modern adventure games, like Ace Attorney, you'll sometimes get, like, a little creature to follow you around to give commentary. So I wonder if this was, to an extent, inspired by Portopia, and how many other characters and games can be traced back to characters like Yasu. Outside of this, though, the game is pretty standard for an adventure game, including the grievances that you may have with that genre. There are times when you may need to resort to pixel hunting and just click everything on screen because the object you're looking for is invisible, at least on the Famicom version. Maybe in the PC versions, something is visible, but I wasn't able to get very far to notice. On the Famicom versions, there were times when you needed to pick up something near a doorway or under a table, and there's just no indication of what you're looking for. This spot on the bookshelf looks like there's nothing there, but there is, and I just shouldn't question that sometimes. Yasuo playing tricks on you, saying he's found something when there's nothing there, really hurts in these cases, because you'll be looking around like a madman just for you to be so excited to find something and find out that he's wasting your time. Yasuo, I'm gonna fight you, get over here. The other thing that I thought was kind of weird is that in the Famicom version, we had this random first person dungeon crawling segment in the basement, and it's just never explained. Hori was a fan of RPGs, and he put this in as a reference and even hid some Easter eggs within it, but ultimately it serves the same purpose as the basement in every other version, just with a maze added to it. There's also a weird mechanic within the game where sometimes you'll hit a roadblock, and the solution is to return to the station where they'll give you a story update. No one ever tells you to return to the station, they just expect for you to do this. And given that the only other reason you'll ever be in the station is to either question witnesses or suspects, you likely will never return if you've questioned them about everything and you have no reason to go back. I mean, if you have all the evidence on table and you're like, oh, I need to go look for so and you're looking for them and you can't find them, why are you returning to the police station? You've already questioned everyone there. I don't fully know how they expect you to figure that out, but I'm assuming that they just want you to figure this out randomly or talk to your friends about it and figure out. I'm just gonna assume that was it. There have been other versions of the game made throughout the years, but the only other one I'm going to touch in this video will be the only version to get an official English translation. The Square Enix AI tech preview version, which reverted back to using a text parser like the original PC version. This version, in my opinion, just isn't very good. The text parser has quite a few issues trying to comprehend what you write, even if it's in basic English. Sometimes you need to be extremely specific about something, and other times you can just be extremely vague and it has no idea what you're talking about. The suggestions that the game gives you are sometimes working, but other times Yasu still has no idea what you're talking about. I'm not going to get into the moral and ethical standpoint of making a game with AI as its core focus. I will say that, in my personal opinion, a text bot game like this, it would be one of the better uses of AI, but I still don't recommend this to anyone outside of a novelty. I do appreciate that you put little glowy star objects on things you can interact with as opposed to them being invisible, but now I think it's a little bit too easy because you can't miss anything because they're just sticking out like a sore thumb. It's the only thing I think this game does even better, and even then it's debatable. Overall, this is a very short game, and there's not much going for it other than, the story, But I'm not going to talk about that because it's an adventure game with a murder mystery aspect, and I don't want to ruin your experience. The legacy that this game has, though, it not only gave rise to other adventure games like the Famicom Detective Club series, which, hey, in between the many months it took for me to make this video, not only has remakes, but also a new game coming out in 2024. But we also had two sequels to Portopia Serial Murder Case. I mean, sort of sequels. They're not true sequels, but they are adventure games made by Yuji Horii. And one of those sequels is even getting a remake. So, I think that this game had a pretty big impact. And that's not even counting the fact that it's like Hideo Kojima, Eiji Aonuma, and so on all drew inspiration from this game. So, in my personal opinion, if you have even a passing interest in adventure games, I would give this game a shot just to see how far we came. And if you didn't notice from this video, I'm finally changing the way I make my videos. This video has been in development for a very, very long time. I was originally going to do one of my hour-and-a-half long plot summary videos or extended walkthroughs, whatever you want to call that. I'm not really going to do that, especially for this type of game. I may still do those long playthrough type videos occasionally, but I personally like to talk in detail about things that I like. And I don't feel like simply recapping what events happen as I play is going to get that same effect. And I feel like a 20 to 30 minute video on an adventure game from the NES sums it up pretty well. If you like this direction, let me know, and I'll be glad to continue doing videos like this. If you prefer the more long-form, extended playthrough videos, let me know about that too. Maybe I will make more of those on the side, like in the process of doing these, but these shorter, more actual review type videos is what I want to do going forward. If you like this video, leave a like, let me know. If there's anything you think I can improve, let me know. Also, leave a like though, because, I kind of want the attention. I'll see you all in the next video, hopefully sooner rather than later. There's a lot of games that I'm playing and want to play, and so much stuff going on in this year. It's intense. But hopefully I get it out sooner rather than later. Thank you all for watching.